My name is Iris Calloway. I'm 31 years old and I've been married to my husband for 6 years. Last month, at our son's first birthday party, my sister-in-law stood up in front of every single person we'd invited and told them I had been lying about who I was for our entire marriage. She said I had hidden my past, hidden my real identity, and that my husband had no idea who he had actually married. The room went completely still. I could feel every pair of eyes turn toward me at once. And my husband, the man who had held my hand through every hard thing in our life together, slowly took a step back. But I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I just looked at her calmly and said, "You're right. Let's talk about the past." Because I already knew something she didn't, and I'd been waiting for the right moment to say it. But before I get to that, please like this video, subscribe to HeartPath Stories, and let me know in the comments what country you're watching from. Now let me tell you about the day my sister-in-law handed me the best gift she never meant to give. My son's name is Leo. He turned 1 on a Saturday in early spring, and we had planned his party for weeks. My husband and I had spent the night before blowing up balloons, arranging little sandwiches on trays, and hanging a banner above the back door that said, "Happy First Birthday" in yellow and white. It was exactly the kind of day I had spent years imagining when I was younger, back when my life was much harder and much smaller than it is now. Our backyard was full of people by noon. My husband's parents had driven in from out of state. A few of his cousins came with their kids, our neighbors, some friends from his office, and a handful of people from the playgroup I'd joined after Leo was born. Leo sat in his little high chair near the picnic table, completely unaware of any of it, just grabbing Cheerios off his tray and grinning at whoever walked by. I remember standing by the back door for a moment and just watching him. I thought, this is it. This is the life I built. And I felt proud. My sister-in-law, my husband's older sister, had arrived early. She lived about 40 minutes away and had always made a point of being present for family events, which on the surface seems thoughtful. But over the years, I had learned that her version of being present usually meant being in control. From the very beginning, she had opinions about everything. How my husband and I had decorated our apartment, the neighborhood we chose when we bought our house, whether I was working too much or not enough, whether I was the right kind of person for her brother. She never said any of it directly, not to my face. Instead, she would make small observations, frame everything as concern, and then smile the way people smile when they want you to know they're watching you. I had done my best to keep the peace. For 6 years, I had been polite at every holiday, every birthday, every dinner. I had given her the benefit of the doubt more times than I could count. But that afternoon, standing in my own backyard while my son celebrated his first year alive, I could feel something was different. She kept finding small reasons to pull my husband aside and speak quietly near the fence. Every time he came back, he looked slightly more confused. At one point, his mother glanced at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between concern and apology. About an hour into the party, after the cake had been set up on the table and everyone had gathered around to sing, my sister-in-law asked if she could say a few words. My husband looked a little surprised but nodded. She was family. It was a family party. He didn't think anything of it. She started normally enough. She talked about how much she loved her brother, how happy she had been when Leo was born. People were smiling. I was watching her and wondering why something in my chest felt tight. And then she paused, looked directly at me and said, "I also think this family deserves honesty, and I've been carrying something for too long." The smiles around the yard slowly faded. She said that before my husband and I had met, she had tried to look into my background because she wanted to protect him. She said she had found things that concerned her. She said my name wasn't what I had told people it was, that I had a different last name before I was married. One I had changed not through marriage but deliberately, years earlier, that I had grown up in circumstances I had never disclosed, and that my husband had no idea about any of it. She said she had been waiting to see if I would ever tell him the truth myself, and since I never had, she had decided to do it for me. By the time she finished speaking, the yard was completely silent. Even Leo had stopped reaching for his Cheerios. My husband turned toward me slowly. His face wasn't angry. It was confused, and that was somehow worse. He said my name quietly, just once, like a question. I looked at him, then I looked at her, then I looked at the people standing around us, neighbors and friends and relatives who had just watched this woman unravel 6 years of my life in about 90 seconds. And I said, "You're right. Everything you just said about my name is true." My husband blinked. A few people shifted where they stood. I kept going. I said that I had changed my last name before we met. I said that I had grown up in a way I didn't talk about often. And then I said, "But there's something you forgot to mention. And I think now would be a good time for everyone to hear it." My sister-in-law's expression flickered. Just for a second. And I saw it. I had not planned for that afternoon to go the way it did, but I had been prepared for it for a long time. About 8 months earlier, something had happened that changed the way I thought about her completely. We had been going through a difficult stretch financially, nothing catastrophic, but my husband had taken a pay cut after changing jobs, and we were being careful with money for a while. During that time, I had noticed a few strange things. Small amounts disappearing from our joint savings account, not large enough to be alarming right away, but consistent. I had mentioned it to my husband, and he said he hadn't moved anything. We assumed it was some kind of banking error and let it sit. A few weeks later, I checked again, and the pattern had continued. I started keeping notes, dates, amounts, timing. I didn't want to say anything to my husband until I understood what was happening, because I didn't want to cause a panic without a reason. I contacted our bank and asked them to flag any unusual activity and send me alerts. And then I waited. The alert came on a Tuesday evening. It showed an attempt to access our account from an external device. The location it gave was about 40 minutes away. I stood in our kitchen for a long time after I read that notification. 40 minutes away. That was exactly how far my sister-in-law lived. I didn't confront her. I didn't say a word to anyone. Instead, I called a friend of mine who works in financial investigation and asked for help, quietly and carefully. He spent several weeks tracing what he could. What he found was not a banking error. There had been a series of small transfers, all within the same time window each month, all initiated from the same device. That device was not registered to our household. The account they originated from was linked to a name I recognized. Not her name directly, but a secondary account that, when traced further, connected back to her. She had been moving small amounts from our savings. Over 18 months, it added up to just over $11,000. I had printed the report and kept it in an envelope in the back of my desk drawer. I had not opened it again until 2 nights before Leo's birthday party, when I tucked it into the pocket of the bag I planned to bring outside with me. So, when she stood in my backyard and announced to everyone that I had been hiding things, I was ready. After I told the group that there was something she had forgotten to mention, my sister-in-law crossed her arms and said she didn't know what I was talking about. Her voice was steady, but her jaw was tight. I said, "I think you do." I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. I set it on the picnic table in front of me, flat, without opening it yet. People were watching both of us now. My husband had gone very still. I told him that 8 months ago I had noticed money missing from our savings. He looked at me and asked why I hadn't said anything. I told him that I hadn't wanted to say anything until I was sure. And now I was sure. My sister-in-law suddenly laughed, short and sharp, and said this was ridiculous. She told my husband not to let me make myself the victim here. She said I was deflecting because she had told the truth about me. I nodded calmly. She had told the truth about my name. I wasn't arguing that, but I asked her if she wanted to explain to everyone in the yard why a financial investigation report connected her account to ours. The laugh disappeared. My husband looked at her. He said her name. She shook her head. I opened the envelope and removed the printed report. I didn't read it out loud. I just walked it over to my husband and let him look at it. His eyes moved slowly down the page. His expression didn't change, not at first, but his hands tightened slightly around the paper. He looked up at her and asked, quietly, what this was. She said it was nothing. She said someone must have set her up. She said my friend must have manipulated the report because I had known all along that she was going to say something and I had wanted to get ahead of it. My husband looked at the report again. Then he looked at me and asked if this was real. I said yes. I told him I could call my friend right now if he wanted to speak with him directly. I told him the bank had copies of everything. The yard had gone completely silent again. Even the kids had somehow gotten quiet. His mother made a small sound from somewhere behind me. My sister-in-law looked around the yard the way people look around when they realize no one is on their side. Her eyes landed on her parents, then on her brother, then back on me. She said, "I just wanted to protect him." My husband set the paper down on the table. His voice was flat and exhausted when he asked, "From what? From me?" She didn't answer. He told her that if she had concerns about our marriage or about me, she could have come to him privately at any point over the past 6 years. He told her that standing up in front of our friends and family at our son's birthday party and making an accusation without asking him first was not protecting him. And then he looked at the report still sitting on the table and said that there was apparently quite a bit she had not told him either. She started crying then. She said she hadn't meant for any of this to happen. She said she had made a mistake and that she would pay it back and that she had just been going through something and she hadn't known how to ask for help. My husband listened to all of it. He didn't raise his voice. When she finished, he said, "You need to go home. We'll talk later when it's not Leah's birthday." She picked up her things slowly. Nobody stopped her. She walked through the side gate and a moment later, we heard her car pull out of the driveway. For a moment, nobody moved. Then one of our neighbors, a woman I've known for 2 years who has never once been at a loss for words, cleared her throat and said, "Well, who wants cake?" A few people laughed, a little awkwardly. Leo, who had apparently been watching all of this from his high chair with great interest, chose that exact moment to slap both hands down on his tray and shriek happily. The party continued. My husband and I didn't talk about it until everyone had gone home and Leo was asleep. We sat at the kitchen table with the leftover cake between us, and I told him everything. I told him about my name, about why I had changed it, about the years before we met that I had never found the right words to explain. I told him about my childhood, the parts that had been hard, the parts I had been ashamed of, the reasons I had wanted to start over before I started anything with him. He listened to all of it without interrupting. When I finished, he sat quietly for a moment and then said, "Why didn't you just tell me?" I said I didn't know how. I said I didn't know how. I said I had been afraid that the parts of my past that felt the most broken were the parts that would make him see me differently. He was quiet again for a little while. Then he said, "Iris, I fell in love with you. Not with whoever you were before I met you. And not with whatever her version of you is either." I didn't say anything for a moment. I just looked at him. He asked if there was anything else he needed to know. I said no. He said okay. He reached across the table and took my hand and held it there. We didn't speak about it again that night. We didn't need to. The following week, my husband contacted a lawyer about the money. His sister agreed to a repayment arrangement and a written acknowledgement of what she had done. There was no criminal charge filed because that was his choice to make, not mine, and he chose to give her the chance to make it right. I respected that decision even though part of me had wanted something harder. She and I have not spoken since that afternoon. My husband speaks to her occasionally, briefly, with the measured distance of someone who is still working out how much trust can be rebuilt and how long that will take. I don't ask about those conversations and he doesn't push me to be part of them. We've found a rhythm that works for now. Leo is doing well. He started pulling himself up on the furniture last week and looking extremely pleased with himself every time he manages it. My husband sends me videos during the day when I'm at work. Little clips of Leo standing up and then sitting down hard and then doing it again. I watch them on my lunch break and I think about that afternoon in the backyard, the silence and the eyes and the paper on the table. And then I think about this, these videos, this ordinary Tuesday, this life. She thought she was exposing me. She thought she was going to pull back a curtain and show everyone something that would fall apart under the light. But the thing she never understood, the thing she never once bothered to find out, was that I had already told my husband the things that mattered. Not the paperwork, not the name on a document, but who I was and what I had come from and what I was trying to build. He already knew me. She just didn't know that he did. And the only thing that ended up exposed that afternoon was the thing she had spent 18 months hoping nobody would find. I've thought about that afternoon a lot since it happened. Not obsessively, not with bitterness, but with the kind of quiet attention you give to something that genuinely surprised you about yourself. I used to believe that hiding the harder parts of your past was a form of self-protection, and maybe it was for a while. When I changed my name, when I left behind the version of my life that felt too broken to carry into something new, I told myself I was starting over. I told myself that what I had come from didn't have to define where I was going. That felt true then. I still think it is true. But somewhere along the way, self-protection started to look a lot like fear. And fear has a way of leaving doors open that you think you've closed. My sister-in-law walked through one of those doors. She thought she was carrying a weapon. What she didn't understand was that the thing she planned to use against me had already lost its power because I had already begun to deal with it myself. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Here's what I've come to believe about people who spend years watching and waiting for someone else to fall. They are usually running from something of their own. The energy it takes to monitor another person, to collect information, to build a case, to choose the most public and painful moment to deliver it. That is not the energy of someone who is okay. That is the energy of someone who is not dealing with their own life. And eventually, the thing you refuse to face will find its way to the surface, one way or another. Not because the world is punishing you, just because that is how things work. Pressure builds. Truth moves. I'm not proud of every choice I made during that period. I kept the financial investigation quiet for months. I debated whether I was doing the right thing by waiting. There were nights I second-guessed myself. But I also knew that if I brought it forward without proof, I would look reactive. I would look like exactly what she wanted me to look like. Someone grasping for a way out. So I waited. I gathered what I needed. I stayed calm when calm was the hardest thing to be. That is not something that came naturally to me. I had to practice it, consciously, over years. What I want to say, if any of this is useful to anyone, is this: the truth about who you are is not something another person can take from you. They can try to reframe it, weaponize it, announce it in the worst possible way at the worst possible moment. But they cannot change what actually happened, what you actually survived, or what you actually built from it. My sister-in-law knew a few facts about my past. She knew nothing about what those facts had cost me or what I had done with them. Leo is pulling himself up on the furniture now, falling down, doing it again. He doesn't know yet that falling is part of it. He just knows he wants to stand up. I think about that sometimes. I think there is something in that worth holding on to.